It's the year 1674. A merciless war rages in Mauritania, West Africa. What happened here will reverberate across West Africa even today. The Shah Buba War of Mauritania. Hello and welcome to African History Series. Africans telling African stories. Please like this video and subscribe. There are more videos coming. Today we remember a forgotten history of West Africa, the Arab conquest of West Africa. Africa, as the Arab called it, Bilad as Sudan, land of the blacks, have had centuries of history with the more Eurasian inhabitants of its northern hemisphere. Long before the Roman Empire, the coasts of North Africa have attracted conquests from many civilizations for millennia. These arrivals pushed African kingdoms southwards, and they were replaced by the more Eurasian tribes like the Berbers and Copts. In fact, the word Africa is a Roman name for a Berber tribe, the Afri, in present-day Tunisia. The Copts, who were mainly Christians under the Coptic Church, served the Roman Empire until the Romans were replaced by Arab conquerors starting from Egypt in 639 AD. It will mark almost the end of Christianity in North Africa, which was far older than the Christianity in Europe. However, in the south, the Nubian and Ethiopian Christian kingdoms would manage to ward off Arab conquest over many wars. Arab conquest in Africa brought with it Islam, but ultimately it was powered by slavery, war, and bloodshed. The Arabs, after conquering and absorbing the local Berber tribes, began a westward expansion from the Red Sea to the Atlantic coast of Mauritania. The Arab expansion to the west or the Maghreb would change the history of countries like Nigeria, Senegal, and Mali long before the European scramble for Africa in 1885. Estimates running into millions of Africans will be captured and sold to slave markets in Arabia before European slave trade even began. Thousands of black slaves in neck and leg chains will perish in the punishing heat of Sahara Desert on their way to the Mediterranean Sea. Apart from castration, the lifespan of slaves under appalling conditions in Arabia was no more than 7 years, meaning that endless supply of black bodies was needed. The concept of black slavery was so deep in Arab society that the Arab word for black, abid, became synonymous with the word slave. As early as 652 AD, the new Arab ruler in Egypt wrote to the Nubian kingdom to the south after a stalemate, and he had one specific demand: 360 African slaves to be sent to Egypt as a token of peace. The peace will, however, not last, as much of Nubia in present-day Sudan will ultimately be defeated and its Christian cathedrals lost to history. Many African tribes in Sudan will carve out their own country in South Sudan in 2011, although they will fail to bring Darfur with them. By 800 AD, an Arab army officer, Ibrahim al-Aghlab, ruled over all Berber lands, but his dynasty would be removed by a Berber rebellion in 910 AD. Arabic and Barbary tribes will contest dominion over Africa for a long time. The game changer, however, was the invasion of Africa by thousands of Arab nomads from Arab Bedouin clans known as Banu al-Iraq in 1051. They were likened to a swarm of locusts by historian Ibn Khaldun. They drove out settled rural communities and absorbed Berber tribes into the Bedouin custom. They were joined by another Arab grouping, the Banu Hassan, also found in present-day Iraq. The Banu Hassan would thereafter move west of Sahara in search of land and slaves. Tales of Africa rich in gold have long abounded in Arabian folklore. The famous offshore tale was of Mansa Musa, opulent journey to Mecca. The first of West African kingdoms to fall was the gold-rich Soninke kingdom of Senegal called Ouagadougou. The Soninke people was seized by a nomadic Berber group, the Sahanja. The Sahanja proved to be poor merchants, and the kingdom soon went into a decline. The Mande-speaking Mali quickly replaced Ouagadougou in the gold and also colonial trade. The Mali kingdom lasted for decades until 14th century before its invasion by two Berber groups, Tuaregs from the north and the Fulani cattle farmers in the west. Mali's empire fell into decline in 14th century and was replaced by the Songhai Empire with its capital at Timbuktu. It stretched from Mali, Senegal, and northern Nigeria by 1492 AD. The wealth of Songhai attracted the envy of Sultan of Morocco, Al-Mansur, who dispatched a looting army led by a Spanish eunuch, Judah Pasha, in 1590 AD. Songhai defended her empire with swords and spears, while her enemy arrived with cannons and muskets. Morocco occupied Songhai until 1599, when the army returned with gold worth nearly $1 million. Arab occupation of Songhai brought Timbuktu, one of the earliest centers of human learning in history, to a permanent decline. The Portuguese began to trade slaves with the Arabs of Mauritania from 1444 AD, and it's important to mention that other African kingdoms, like the Wolof, also participated in this European trade in human flesh. With no weapons in hands of greedy men, phony wars broke out in many West African villages, and victims were carted off to Portuguese and other European ships that joined the windfall from the 16th century. But the Arab slave trade continued uninterrupted, and slaves continued to be shipped to Arabia. The Borno kingdom, stretching from the present-day northeastern Nigeria to northern Cameroon, traded slaves for horses from Barbary tribes and became an empire under Idris Aluma. However, a new power will quickly limit its expansion. The Fulani and Arabized Barbary tribes had moved westward with the Arabs. They were and still are mainly cattlemen, but they had advantage over other African tribes as they could read and write in Arabic. Igbos were the only group in West Africa to develop an indigenous system of writing known as Nsebide, but it was only available to a secret society known as the Ekpe. In well-organized rebellions called the Fula Jihads, the Fulani will set out to conquer many West African kingdoms within a short time. The Fulani jihads were inspired by the quick successes that a Berber Islamic scholar named Nasir al-Uddin enjoyed in conquering African tribes. Initially, Nasir al-Uddin, with his bands of cattlemen, succeeded in toppling many African dynasties like the Wolo, the Jollof, the Kayo, and the Futa Toro. But he soon ran out of luck when he attacked the Arab tribe in Mauritania, the Banu Hassan, and was killed in 1674. The Beni Hassan, known as White Moors, would go on to enslave nearly all African tribes in Mauritania until 1981, when slavery was officially abolished in the country, although it will not be criminalized until 2007. Many experts believe that slavery still exists in Mauritania. Copycat jihads by Fulani pastoralists soon erupted, and by 1725 the Mende rulers in Fouta Djallon in today's Guinea were removed. The two colors of Senegal were defeated by the Fulani in 1776. Fun fact, the word Guinea is a Berber word for blacks. In northern Nigeria, the Hausa kingdoms will soon be overrun by Fulani scholars who had settled there in 1754. Usman Dan Fodio, copying from fellow Fulani in West Africa, declared jihad against Hausa kings in 1804. He managed to raise an army of pastoralist Fulani and soon conquered the ancient cities of Zaria, Kano, Katsina, and Sokoto. Having crowned himself as the Sultan of Hausa land, Fodio and his descendants will begin expansion southward into non-Hausa land, ostensibly to expand an Islamic caliphate. It will launch a surprise attack on Muslim Brunu Kingdom, but had limited success. The Islamic Caliphate, with its capital in Sokoto, will go on to seize the Nupe Kingdom and venture deep in the south to take Ilorin from its Yoruba rulers. Having crowned himself as the Sultan of Hausa land, Fodio and his descendants will begin expansion southwards into non-Hausa land, ostensibly to expand an Islamic caliphate. It will launch a surprise attack on Muslim Brunu Kingdom, but had limited success. The Islamic Caliphate, with its capital in Sokoto, will go on to seize the Nupe Kingdom and venture deep in the south to take Ilorin from its Yoruba rulers. Ambitious Fulani warriors, with the blessing of the Islamic Caliphate, will conquer the heavily populated Adamawa region in Nigeria and Cameroon. More than half of the Adamawa population, numbering in the millions, will be killed or exported before the suppression of slavery in northern Nigeria by the British in the 1830s. The success of Danfodio in northern Nigeria inspired further Fulani jihad elsewhere in West Africa. Another Fulani, Amadou Lobo, raised a jihad against the Bambara kingdom at Segu, present-day Mali. Most of the African kingdoms in Mali soon fell to a new jihadist, Omaro Tao, who conquered Timbuktu in 1863. The Fula jihads were completely successful, and descendants of the conquerors continue to form the ruling class in many established West African society to this day, often titling themselves as emirs. One of the reasons that Fula jihads were so successful was because it was mostly not an invasion, but a spontaneous internal war in societies they had first embedded themselves as cattle farmers. For centuries, Africa was a land where an ambitious Arab or Berber could carve a lucrative kingdom of slavery. The most successful of them would be the notorious Tipu Tip of Zanzibar in East Africa. We'll be making a full video on the infamous Tipu Tip. Slavery will not be abolished in many Arab countries until the 1940s. Even so, descendants of black slaves continue to face discrimination and destitution in Iraq and many places in the Middle East.